Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode, we welcome author Christina Henry to the podcast to talk about their upcoming novel, or actually novel that's out now, The House That Horror Built. A wonderful novel that we actually gave 5 stars to on our website, capesandtights.com. But Henry is the author of novels such as Near the Bone, Ghost Tree, Horseman, best-selling Black Wings series, the Chronicles of Alice series, which has a new printing of Alice available at like places like Walmart and Target, things like that, as well as the recently released last year, Good Girls Don't Die. Christina's new novel came out yesterday, April or May 14th at bookstores everywhere. You can check out bookshop.org to get your copy today or visit your local bookstore, The House That Horror Built. But yeah, Christina came on to talk about the book and so much more. Enjoy this episode. But before you do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, all those things. Subscribe, rate, review over on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, YouTube as well. And check out our website, capesandtights.com. But this is Christina Henry talking The House That Horror Built and so much more right here on Capes and Tights. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's so, like I said, I always feel like it's this awkward thing because we obviously have given each other pleasantries and things like that prior to pressing the record button, but you have to do it to start off on a good foot here. But yeah, so we're here to talk books. We mainly talk a mixture on this podcast about comics, novels, movies, anything that's in the multimedia, landscape. And so it's nice to have this discussion about a horror novel, which is something that I'm also a big fan of. And your book, The House That Horror Built, that is out May 14th at bookstores everywhere. But to start out, I mean, were you a bookworm as a child that led into wanting to create your own stories? Like, how did this love for writing or reading novels start?
Yeah, I was definitely a bookworm. I was one of those kids who went to the library and took out 10 books, and I would be back 2 days later having read all of the books and checking out another 10 books. And I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, so I would say that I pretty quickly outstripped my age group in the library. Like a lot of kids who read a lot, I was always 3 or 4 grade levels ahead of what I was supposed to be reading. Um, but especially, I remember when I was around 10, 11, 12, I started to drift into the adult section because there really weren't, this was, back in times when dinosaurs roamed the earth. There
Yes.
really weren't a lot of yet YA novels at the time. That wasn't a thing. And I remember reading Stephen King's Christine, and I remember reading Flowers in the Attic like every other young girl of that time. I don't know why adults let us read that book, but um yeah, I was always a reader, and around the time when I was 12, I read The Lord of the Rings and I decided I wanted to be a writer. And then my dad gave me a notebook and I wrote my first quote unquote book by hand, and it was an awful lot like The Lord of the Rings. But, only about 70 pages long, and it had a female main character.
That's a fun. It's funny how like similar to how I think about like how it's hard to be a writer as well as something, or not a writer, but a creator of some sorts, and also be up on the current things in your area. So like reading novels or like in the comic book industry. We had a conversation the other day about how many Spider-Man comic books have been out there, that how as a cover artist for a comic book not draw something so eerily similar to someone else's version of that, because it's just been so many of them out there that it's kind of funny that like, yes, that you think that you all read the Lord of the Rings and all of a sudden I know you write a book that's very similar to the Lord of the Rings. It
Yes.
might seep in there, but change a few things and make it your own. But yeah, it's pretty funny. But that's obviously years later now. You have a number of books on the market. You're an accomplished writer, and I'm guessing you're doing this full time. This is your job, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I homeschooled my son for a long time. So that I was kind of half doing that and half writing. when he was little, I used to take him to the park and like stick him in the sandbox so that I could write for a couple of hours because he was past the age of napping, but he wasn't, at a school age yet. So, I've always kind of been juggling that, but he's going to college next year, thank God.
I don't
So
say that stuff
yes.
like that. Like, because like I have a 6 week old and I
Mhm.
have a 3 year old, and I'm just thinking like,
Oh,
my wife and I were both like, okay, we're having one. This is it. We're gonna do
mhm.
the one kid. And then my son was so amazing and so easy, quote unquote. I mean, nothing's
Mhm.
ever easy raising kids, but they were like, oh, we could probably do another one. And now we're thinking to ourselves, like, what am I thinking? What did I do this
Yeah.
for?
I had three siblings when I grew up, and um and I was the oldest, so I was like the third parent. But I will tell you that, I think from the point of view of a parent, like a second child doesn't double your work, it like quadruples it. So, you think it's going to be like an easy add-on, but it's not really. So, yeah.
And then timing always works out funny because like my son won't sleep now, and I'm like, no, my daughter who's 6 weeks old is the one that's not supposed to be sleeping, not you. And so now we're up all night, not because of her, because of him. It's just the whole thing. But yes, I have 18 or yeah, 18 more years of this too until I'm they're out of the house and I can actually get back to having fun again. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I like doing it.
No,
Um,
I do too. It's just, at some point you're like, okay, I'm ready for you to fly.
yes,
Like, I'm,
do your
I'm
own thing, be
ready.
your own person. Yes, exactly. Um, but yeah, so you obviously found time to write these novels and do all these things, and then you come up with this book, The House That Horror Built, that comes out, like I said, May 14th. Is
Mhm.
this something that you've had like in the hopper for a while that you've been working on, or is this something that just like, okay, you finished everything else you've been doing and this the next novel to work on?
So I usually have kind of like ideas, just very vague notions, kind of cooking in the background. I'm the world's laziest writer. I don't plot, I don't do anything. I just kind of go with what I'm feeling, and then just like I write chronologically. I write by hand, and I just kind of follow the story where it takes me. And I kind of had an idea, very vague idea of the house that horror built while I was writing. I don't even want to say my previous novel, Good Girls Don't Die. I think it
Yeah.
was even the book before that. It was kind of just simmering, just had a very vague idea of like this woman who goes to work in a house for a horror director who has all of these props in his house. And of course, he's like a weird recluse. And I think I originally actually, my original thought of the novel, it had a different tone, but that's kind of what happens when I sit down to write. It always kind of becomes its own animal.
Mhm.
So, um, but I wrote The House That Horror Built in 2022. So if that gives you an idea too of how long it takes for
Yes.
publishing to go through
Well,
its process.
it's funny because I talk to a lot of comic creators, and that's one of those things we don't find out a lot in the comic book industry that a comic book's coming out until like 6 weeks before the comic book is on shelves because there's this like weird promotional period. It's a lot different in books where like you're announcing books a year in advance. Like you're not even like the book's not even finished yet, and you're like, okay, pre-order this book. It's such
Yeah.
a unique thing, but I think it grabs so much more. Like it gives me as a person who like covering these things like the ability to fit it into a schedule of when I'm going to read things too, because like I have a stack of advanced copies of books that I need to get through, and if they're all coming out May 14th, I don't know when I'm going to read them all. But if
Right.
like they're throughout the entire year, like I just got one last night for that one that comes out in October. And it's like, okay,
Hmm.
this gives me the summer to read this book and actually, ingest what happens in it, maybe read it twice or something like that. Whereas, and like I said, in the comic book world, it's like you get it like on Friday and the comic book comes out on Wednesday. You're like, how am I gonna I've spent this whole weekend just reading this book, get a review up and so on. But yeah, it's nice to have that. But yeah, you not only have that, but you've been working on it for a year before that. And so you've been promoting this book in your own mind for 2 years by writing it, getting it to the publisher, and then actually sending it out. And now you're only a couple weeks away from actually putting it on shelves. But the novel is well, how would you explain it to those people who are fans of your writing? How is it similar? And obviously I read it, but for those who haven't, like similar or different than like something like Good Girls Don't Die or any of your other books that are on the market?
I mean, I think it's different from Good Girls Don't Die. Good Girls Don't Die had a really unique structure.
Mm.
But I think if you read my work, you'll recognize my style, but I always do something a little bit different in every single book. And that's a little bit of it is by design because I want to challenge myself and I don't want to get into a rut. I don't want to write the same book over and over again. I know that there are readers and writers who love to do that,
Mhm.
but and I sometimes I do like that as a reader. I can't tell you how many times I've read the same Agatha Christie books over and over again. But I think that for myself, I want to challenge myself. I want to try something a little bit different every single time. So every time I write, I try to change things up a little bit to keep things interesting for myself and also in hopes of becoming a better writer. I
Mm.
think that every author, is trying to be better than the book they wrote before. Um, and with this book, a little bit of that was the way I structured it, where it kind of flips between the past and the present, where like so that the character's backstory unfolds in a slightly different way. Um, and I was really cherry picking events from their life to kind of communicate who they were in the present. Um, and but I think the one thing that stays consistent is for me, the characters always come first.
Mm.
I am interested in plot, but only to the extent that characters affect their outcomes.
Mm.
Yeah, that's sort of my big concern as a writer.
It's great too because I even feel like the house itself in this book. I mean, I was trying to explain it to someone else. I'm like, it's not a full haunted house story. It's not a haunted house story. Like it's like this weird like or like it has like this. It's hard to explain exactly, and it's a good way because you may just read it and you'll understand. But I was thinking about that too. Is like that the house itself is almost its own character as well. But like I just read a book recently, and I'm not gonna call it out on here, but the book was so invested in the locations they were in. Like
Hmm.
it told like street names so many times, the routes, the towns, and all that stuff. And it was the area was a place that I lived, so I
Right.
understood the thing. But I'm thinking to myself, like, what if someone in Chicago or someone in California is reading this book, have no idea where these places are, but you're saying them like it's everybody should know them. And I was so focused on that. And as I was reading, I was so distracted. I'm like, who is even in this part of the book? I can't even, I know they're on Route 110, but like I don't know who's walking down Route 110 right now. And that was a difficult thing. I am a big person. I just recently, I'm going to talk about in the past 5 years, really got into reading novels. I've been, some short stories. I've read, chapter books. I've read a lot of comic books. And so to me, it's still getting into the groove of actually reading the various types of novels out there. And the limited number of people is always a positive thing to me because I only have to keep track of like five people. And if they're not like full on back and forth all the time, I am in
Right.
a good spot. And that's what this book had to me. And it was like there was very few people that I could keep track of, and I knew where they were and then what was going on, and that made me happy for sure. But I was putting together a list for our website on the top, the most anticipated novels of 2024, and I was researching and Goodreads and all these other places to find, what the books that are coming out this year. And this book came up, and I was reading the description, the solicitation for it, and so on. I was like, oh, this book sounds really good. I can't wait. And then I contacted your publisher and was like, oh, I really love to talk to Christina on the podcast, so on and so forth. And then I got really nervous and scared because I'm like, I hadn't read it yet, and I'm like, what if it's awful?
Well,
Like, do
that's
you know what I
always a
mean? Like,
possibility.
I'm like, what if I read it? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. And now I have to try to talk to someone. And then I read it and I was like, oh, never mind. I really want to talk about it because it was phenomenal. It was, like I mentioned, it has this mystery, suspense, horror, family, relationships, sense of unsettling moments that you're just like, when, most of us read at our house. And so, like,
Yeah.
if they're talking about a house that has more going on than the normal house, and you're like, it's dark. I have kids. We just mentioned it's dark out because they're all sleeping. I'm like, I don't know if I want to read this anymore. Can I read this
Mm.
outside in the sunlight? Because it has all that in it. And I think that's what's great about it. And I think that the title pulls you in. The cover's amazing. I will say that too. The cover works really well.
Yeah,
It
it's
makes even more
beautiful.
sense after you read the book. But it's all of it together made it like it was phenomenal. So I'm really, not to pat you on the back fully here, but like it's really well done, and I'm very happy that you came and decided to talk to me about it.
Well, I'm really glad that you liked it. I will say, as a reader, as a writer, you're always a little nervous when stuff goes out because you just don't know how people will take the book. And the truth is that like a match between a reader and a writer depends on a lot of things. Like it's not just the book, it's kind of like what the reader brings to the book. Like if you loved the writer's last book and you're like, this one's a disappointment now because I loved the last one so much, or the mood that you're in, or the last thing that you read that was not this writer that, blew you away or put you in a bad mood, and now you're like taking that negativity into the next book that you read. It could be you had a rough day. It could be you're just not in the mood. I think that kind of thing is underestimated, where like the reader brings themselves to the process of reading, and it's not just the words on the page. Like you're bringing your anticipation and a bunch of other factors to a book, and that can affect what you think of it. So, but as a writer, I unfortunately cannot control that, right? I can control the book that I write. And I try to write the best book that I can. And, my editor tries to edit the book in the best way that she can. And everybody tries to do their job as far as marketing it and getting the word out and all that stuff. But there's so many things you can't control as a writer. And I think that after having been in this business for 14 years, which is crazy to me, you just have to learn to let go.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's gonna sound like some sort of humble brag or some sort of like, oh my gosh, like a first world problem. But I am lucky enough to get either NetGalley or digital, or even physical advanced copies of these. So there's also that slight pressure of someone gave this to review, so you immediately are like, well, I don't want to like just crap on it either. So like you have to
Right.
like also take yourself as someone in the media, someone to say, no, you have to step back. They gave you it for an honest opinion. So if you
Yeah.
don't like it, tell the world you don't like it, because
Yeah.
there are people who aren't going to like it. So if you're just out there saying they're amazing all the time, then there's no integrity in the idea of why you should get a review from someone like ourselves or anybody out there. And I think that um, it's a different. I don't know. It seems to a Goodreads or these places that have rankings and things like that. Like it's weird to see like this the months leading up to your release and then the months after your release. Like you have
Mm,
this like the people who physically went out to the store and bought the book, or the
hmm.
person who just got it sent to them in an email or in the mail
Right.
for advanced copy. What the differences is on sometimes same thing with like movies and those like Rotten Tomatoes and things like that, where you like all the critics get to see it weeks in advance, and then you see all the people actually go see it on the opening weekend. The rankings start to go woo because of the
Right.
difference in the
And
people.
like with movies, like sometimes you'll see a really big difference between the way like critics conceive it and like the cinema score, which is the people who've
Yeah.
actually just walked out of the film. The thing is like the only thing I try not to go and look at reviews. Like if
Yes.
somebody sends me a review, I hope it's positive. People who tag me in negative reviews are mean. Um,
I
but
don't get that. I've always said that. I don't understand that. Like, the only thing I can think of is like that you're trying to pull you down. Not that everybody's trying to do that, but like, why would you send the negative? I don't see that
I mean,
positive.
I think part of it is people have an idea that their opinion of the thing is a critique, and I think they're not really clear that like I said, like when a reader reads a book or you watch a movie, like you're bringing yourself to that experience, so your opinion of that reflects yourself. It's not like an unbiased judgment of the writing or the film or whatever. And I think some people may think they're being helpful, but it's like this is not formal criticism. The editing process happened a year and a half ago. I
Yes.
can't change the book now. So it's just not really a nice thing to do. But the thing I don't like about Rotten Tomatoes or Goodreads or Amazon, whatever, like with these kind of like number rankings, is I feel like it gamifies like people's opinions in a way that I think is not good. Like, I don't know, you can have an opinion about a piece of art, but like even the way people give stars can vary. Like for some person, a 3 star is a great review. For someone else, a 3 star is a terrible review. And so like that mismatch, even between readers, I think causes miscommunication. But again, as the writer, no control.
Yes. Well, we have that. My day
Yeah.
job. I'm a graphic designer, creative director for a brewery, and
Mhm.
I design beer
That's
labels.
cool.
I guess I have a dream. I have a dream job. Are you kidding me? I get to do this on the side and do that. Like this, it's great. But no, like we have this app called Untapped, and it's a beer ranking app, and so like people can go
Yeah.
in there and rate their reviews and so on and so forth. The one downside I would say, if I have a complaint about Goodreads, is there's no half stars. I do think that would be the next thing, because I do think there is a difference between like a 3.5 and a 4, or a 4.5 and a 5. Like there is that thing, but it's like a lot of people where you see them writing their reviews like it's 2.5 stars. I gave 3 stars on or whatever it may be. But in the
Right.
beer one, it's always like 1 star. I really like this beer. Well, why did you rate it 1 star then? I'm so confused right now. Was it an accident? Like what's going on
Yeah.
here? And so there is that, like, if you actually read someone's review versus what they wrote as a thing, you can kind of get an idea whether or not 3 stars is a good review for someone or
Yeah.
not. And the only thing I can think of is like for you as or someone as a creator is to read them and be like, okay, your last 3 books were written in the same style. And then
Mhm.
all your reviews, all the negative reviews are about how people don't like that style. You might go, okay, for the next book, I might switch it up. That's the only thing I can think that it would be beneficial to you to know in the long run. Or not only thing, but one of the things that could be beneficial to you.
I mean, maybe, but on the flip side of that, like, you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah.
And, I can't really write to an unknown, like a vast unknown group of people out there who may or may not like, what I'm doing. So the person I honestly have to please first is myself,
Yeah.
then my agent who has to sell the book, and then my editor who approves it for publication, and that's really where it has to stop,
Mm-hmm.
because you just can't. I mean, look, I'm basically off Twitter. I pop in
Good.
very occasionally just to post like book news. And I went on this morning and somebody told Stephen King, your book, you used to be a good writer. And he responded to his
Yes.
credit, and he said, "Those were the days, huh?"
Yes.
But but the point is like you're not gonna please everybody all the time. Somebody who sold as many books as Stephen King, and this person's on Twitter, who's probably created nothing,
Yes.
is telling this man that he
Well,
used to be a good writer.
that's what world we live in, where people have the ability just to say whatever they want. There's no, like, if I were to say I one day I was gonna meet you and I have
Mhm.
something to tell you, but like 6 years from now I actually met you, in that time frame I probably either forgot what I was gonna tell you or my
Mhm.
opinion of it would have changed. This is like, I have an opinion. I read your book. It's awful, and you write a review, and it's out there in the public. And then if
Right.
someone responds, like someone like Stephen King, then it's always out there, because then people screenshotting it and all these
Right.
things. But someone who's also written as many books as Stephen King knows that they're not all good. He thinks they're good, but he probably doesn't think they're not all the best thing he's ever written. There has
Well,
to be
then,
something in there that's like, if someone's like, "Oh, it wasn't that great," you're like, "Yeah, well, I didn't like it that much either."
well, I think sometimes, like, in the moment, you're satisfied with it. And then
Yeah.
when you look back on it, you're like, maybe I could have done X, Y, or Z. But the flip side of that is that as a writer, you're just writing in whatever moment you're
Mhm.
at personally, right? Like, whatever, and I do think writers, especially as you have a longer career, and I'm definitely seeing this myself, like, this is my 18th book.
Yeah.
I can sort of see myself changing and growing. And it's like sometimes, unfortunately, readers are literally seeing your growing pains, right? Like you're shifting to the next thing. The next book's going to be great, but maybe this one wasn't quite as great as it could have been.
Yes.
But you're
Yes.
just you're learning, and you're doing the best you can in that moment.
Yes, and you evolve as a writer. You evolve. You learn things and things. I mean, we've seen it in the music industry too. Like I follow musicians who all of a sudden their fifth album is completely different than their fourth, third, second, whatever. And you're like, what happened to them? Where did they go? they grew up, they
Yeah.
evolved, they had families, they had, death and life and all this other stuff that happened. And then all you cannot help yourself but put that on the page. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that my biggest argument, I had an argument with someone at the local comic book shop this week about AI. And that's one of
Mm-hmm.
my biggest like things about AI is that there's AI doesn't have any feelings. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing we'll never get if things start to get written by AI or drawn by AI. They don't have the fact that they have to sell this book to pay their mortgage. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have the death, the life, all those things that went into it. So it's just emotionless, and it's gonna likely show on the page that it's actually emotionless, and that's one of those sad things about AI. And this guy was trying to tell me that like 10 years from now, things are all gonna be AI, and I'm like, oh, please stop saying that.
But if that's true, then everything's just going to be the same because I mean, first of all, I have very strong feelings about AI because 13 of my books were fed into a large language model without my permission. So, my sweat, my blood,
Mhm.
my work was, taken without compensation to teach a computer how to write like me, basically, right? But the thing that happens when these machines take all this stuff is they just make a kind of aggregate, right? So
Mhm.
everything is sort of flat, it's average. And I don't think that a computer is going to come up with a fresh original idea. A computer is going to say, like this is popular, this is popular, this is popular, and then like how do I take these popular things and make something that's still
Mhm.
popular? It's not going to, but I mean, Hollywood is very excited about this because
Yeah,
they
like
they
just
really don't want to have to pay writers.
and that's the thing, and that's I was one of the arguments I had. It's like I would think that the only argument I would have for someone saying, I say I'm a graphic artist, so say I took
Mhm.
all my graphic art stuff for the past 10 years and put it into a model so that I can spit out new ideas that are in my style and so on and so forth, and then I can use that as a storyboard for then
Mhm.
you to create original things to say
Mhm.
this is like a okay, I'm getting a sense of what I've done over the past 10 years and I want to make something similar. So I'm using this as a thing. But then it's all your own things and your
Mhm.
computer's telling you your own things. And again, it's not going to give you anything new, but at least
Mhm.
it's going to give you an idea of what you are as a creator. But when you start just using blatant random things on the internet where they're grabbing information from everywhere that's not yours, then that's a
Mhm.
huge thing. It's stealing, it's unoriginal, it's all that stuff. So yeah, it was a whole discussion about it. I'm like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to have this AI. The new thing is going to be like when you go to a bar, you're not supposed to talk like what politics and religion. It's like the third thing they're going to have to add to that thing nowadays is AI because it's just going
Yeah.
to start huge argument.
Yes, somebody brought it up at a book event that I had in the fall, and I was like, I am now like Madeline Kahn and Clue. Like I have flames on the side of my face, because I can't, I'm so angry. I mean, and it was very raw at that time too, because I just found out like very recently that my work had been stolen, and it's absolutely infuriating when you have people who create these large language models saying, well, if we had to pay creators, we wouldn't be able to do this. It's like, so maybe you shouldn't do
Sounds like a sound argument
this.
there. I tell you right now. Also, the other biggest one was like, has anybody seen Terminator? We all know
Mhm.
AI is not a good thing.
Yes, I know. That's my son's argument all the time. He's like, do these people not know about Skynet?
Yes. Um, but it's funny. So your book, The House That Horror Built,
Mhm.
it's like I said, it's a mixture of a bunch of different things that I liked. It was not straight up terrifying. There was
Mhm.
emotional moments. There's family moments. There's, the funny thing also that so your main character's name is Harry,
Mhm.
which is funny because I have a coworker who his name is Mary but goes by Gary, and it
Mhm.
confuses the hell out of it. So I was okay with that. Like my wife was like, "How are you being able to?" This person's name is Harry. Obviously, it's a nickname.
Mhm.
But like, how are you able to keep track of this? Not male, female. Like, it doesn't matter. It's the character in the book. I don't really care what
Right.
gender the person is, but it was very easy for me because I'm like, I have a friend at work who's you know
Right.
goes by Gary and she's a female and she's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that makes sense. So like, if
Mhm.
if I could understand that being a little bit confusing for
Mhm.
somebody, but I liked it a lot in that aspect. But I can side with her. I can feel for her in multiple reasons. And one reason was I have been on the side of like these cool luck things of like my job that I have now that I've had for 7 years. I kind of like somehow lucked into in a sense. Like
Hmm.
one small job and connection with one person led to that. And then this to a person where I was the only full-time employee for a number of years. Now I like sit next to ownership and meetings and things like that. Like I have a way bigger role than I've ever should have been able to give in the first place because of these things. And so when Harry has this ability to go to a work at a iconic director's
Hmm.
house, I felt like that would be me. That'd be someone who'd be like,
Hmm.
okay, I need a job, but your job is actually going to be at this really famous person's house.
Right.
But she treats it so professionally. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like she shows she's like she's not she is a fan, but she's not a fanboying it up and the first day on the job, hey, can I get an autograph? Things like that. So it's like this weird, like she's been lucky enough to work in this house, but also not um making it awkward in that sense until it becomes awkward for other reasons.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that, and that I really hope comes through in the book is like her priority is to get and keep a job for her son, right?
Mhm.
So, like, she's not going to do anything to mess that up, especially the book is set during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, like, if you, had certain types of jobs, like, those jobs just went away
Hmm.
during the pandemic. And I was really trying to communicate, like, that she's really feels like she's hanging by her fingernails and it's really important for her to keep this job because it pays well. It's fairly easy, right? You go to this house, you dust things, you vacuum things, you change the sheets, you leave, and um she's trying so hard because she just wants to make sure she has this stable life for her son.
Hmm.
And that I think adds a layer of friction in the story because when the freaky things start happening, normal people are like, get out of the house. And she's like, I can't because I have a son and I need to feed him and I can't get another job,
Hmm.
So that was also important that, like, because there's always, that horror audience argument of, well, why wouldn't you just leave?
Hmm.
There's this strange stuff is happening, all this stuff, but she can't. She's trying, but she can't.
And it's not just the strange things that are happening at the house. I'm not going to give anything away, but other things happen in personal life
Hmm.
that also forces her to think that she has to think about her son as well. Like it's not just the house, it's other things that are going on. It's like, okay, I absolutely need this job
Yeah.
to pay for things. It's not one of those things where it's like I can make do for a little bit. It's just like, no, no, no. I'm like going to be in a really big situation if I don't have this job. And that you could feel that. And as a parent, I think that's one of those things that I've always complained is I'm like, I never was going to be like this when someone says, when you have your own kids, you'll understand. And I'm
Yeah.
like, ah, shush, what are you talking about? And then I have my own kids and I'm like, okay, now I understand. And you feel that as a parent. You feel like, well, what would you do in this situation?
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things why the TV show and the comic book Walking Dead are one of my favorites ever. It's like, well, what would you do in a situation to protect your kid?
Hmm.
Would you kill people? Would you stay in a house that's some crazy things are going on just to make sure you can put food and stuff on the table? And I would, and that's not that's the feeling I got out of it. And so it added that emotional element to it and that relationship element to it on top of it being a pretty terrifying story. And so that to me had multiple levels on it. And that's why I was like riveted to the whole book. And I'm like to TMI, like on the toilet, like scrolling, like it's like
Can't
every
stop.
moment.
Can't stop.
Well, that's the thing. I
Yeah.
tell people how many books I read in a month. They're like, "Oh, you read 10 books this month?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's because I try to find every moment I can,
Hmm.
because a lot of times there's so many books out there. I'm trying to pick the good ones, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense. And so like I'm riveted to it. So like I'm at work, waiting for someone to come in the office, and I'm like scrolling through reading a couple pages. I'm waiting for water to boil, and I'm reading a couple
Hmm.
pages, and I felt like I got through it in no time. And I can't wait now when I have a physical copy to go through and actually read the physical copy too, because I feel like it's another element of reading a physical book than there is a digital book, in my opinion. But yeah.
Oh yeah, I think so. I can't read books digitally. I mean, I know it's convenient for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like my husband has a lot of like vision issues, so like for him, he loves his Kindle because he can make the font as big as he wants. A lot of people like the convenience of carrying the thing, but I like the sensory experience of a physical copy. I like to smell the book, I like to hold the book, I like to see how far I am in the book and how much
Yes.
farther I have to go. I like everything about that process. So, there are books stacked everywhere in this house and
Yes.
they're all mine.
To hear too. And it's like I do a lot of hybrid reading too with books that are already on the market. So like I do some audiobooks in the car on the way to work. And then when I get home, I'll like, find out where I am, pick up in the novel, and so on and so forth. So my wife was like, you bought that on audiobook. Why are you buying the physical copy? I'm like, because I'm doing both here. Okay, I'm trying to get both of this stuff in there, and there's some obviously I have to. A lot of these digital ones I have to read digitally. But yes, the same thing. The iPad at night, my wife usually falls asleep before I do. And
Hmm.
so lights are off in the bedroom. So like having a backlit device that I can actually read it where you're not trying to have a book, one of those old book lights
Book
on the
lights.
light. I just can't do that. And plus you have to hold that up. So I have a little like a stand that holds it. So there is some benefits to it, but yes, there's still nothing compared to like physically cracking open a book, smelling it, and seeing that too. And then as an artist, there's a cover too. So like
Yeah.
every time you pick that book up, you see that cover. When I pick up my digital book, I see it once and then I scroll past it. And now,
Yeah, you never see it again.
you know,
So you'll listen to an audiobook and read a book at the same time. So like somebody's reading it to you and
I do
then
that
like you're also
sometimes.
reading it.
I do
Yeah.
that. There's
I'm
times that I
curious
do
about
that too.
that.
I do that too because there's certain ones like I just read Anthony Daniels C3PO biography about his
Hmm.
Star Wars thing. And there's like sound
Hmm.
effects and things like that in it. It's kind of cool. It's a benefit if you don't know how to pronounce someone's name or a location because someone says it to
Yeah.
you. Not that audiobook narrators always get it right either, though. That's the thing too. There's always some mistakes there too. But yeah, and then I've read some Star Wars books that was an audio drama to start and then was put into a novel. And so like there is
Hmm.
that people's voices and things like that but most of the time I do like I read it in the car, like I listen to the book in the car, and then when I get
Right.
to the location or I get home at night, I find out where I am in the book and I turn the audiobook off, read to a chapter, and then go to the chapter on the audiobook that I pick up at
So is
places.
it what it kind of I'm curious, what kind of impact does that have on your reading experience? Like, are you thinking, because when I read a book and I haven't listened to the audio,
Yeah.
there's like almost like my own voice, right? Like reading it. When you're reading it and you've heard someone else read it, does it impose the narrator's voice on the book when you're
Uh,
reading, or is it
it's,
still
it depends on the narrator, and some
like
people are really
yourself?
good at like doing different voices for different characters, so it kind of helps. Obviously in a book, most of the time your words are all the same font, all the same weight,
Hmm.
they're all the same. But you go from character to character, and so especially in books that have like uh, I'm reading right now The Midnight Feast from Lucy Foley, and she has like each chapter is a different person. And so if
Hmm.
I would had the audiobook to go with it, it would help me even further because I now know what Bella's voice sounds like because someone's using some
Right.
sort of like they're making a new voice with their own voice, the narrator. And so like it helps me decipher where who's who. And so as I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, I can understand this is Bella, and I understand where we are with Bella or Owen, whoever. And so it's a different thing. And sometimes there's books I just read solely on audiobook, and sometimes there's books that I read solely physically. And a lot of times that's the advanced copy. So like your book, I
Hmm.
read, digitally on my phone, but like, or on my iPad, but still I didn't get to read the audiobook yet because there is no audiobook. Some of them have them, but like
Hmm.
most of the
Yeah,
time there
usually
isn't.
audio comes out the day of the
Yeah,
release.
exactly.
That's
And some,
interesting.
yeah, but it's a fun thing, but it's a way to get not through a book, but a way that if you're really entrenched in a book
Yeah.
that you don't miss an opportunity. I'm doing the dishes and I can read the book because it's in my ears and I can do that. And I'm pretty good at those kind of mundane tasks
Hmm.
doing it or driving. The second I'm like with my kids or something, if there's
Oh
something going
yeah.
on, there's too much going on, and I'm like, wait, what just happened? Who just died?
Yeah. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I generally listen to books I've already read.
Okay.
So, for that reason, so that because I am a long distance runner, so especially when I'm running, I like to listen to books. And sometimes like my brain will like drop into a meditative state and I'll come back and, I'm like a chapter ahead of where I was, but it's okay. I've read the book before. It's not a big deal. I really like to listen to classics
Mm-hmm.
actually because I know them really well. I'm listening to Eddie Izzard's reading of Great Expectations right now. And in a way, it's like discovering the book for the first time because she does these wonderful voices for the characters that I would never do. And, when I'm reading the book to myself. But the one series that I've only ever listened to on audio and never read the books is Ben Aronovich's Rivers of London series. And that's because I found the first book, I think, as an audio, picked it up kind of on a lark listened to it, loved it, but now I can only hear Kobna Holbrook
It's,
Smith read the book to me. Plus, Ben Aronovich is British and he does all of these regional accents that he writes into the book. I'm not from the UK. I have no idea what those accents sound like,
yes,
but Kobna does them on the audio.
yes. And that's the same. I read Washabji Wab. I'm gonna say Wab. I can't say his name very well. Rice, who's Native American or native, and
Moon of the
he
Crusted Snow.
yes, and that and
Yeah,
they
I
has a
love that
native
book.
narrator. So like there's a
Hmm.
narrator that actually speaks the language and speaks the dialect and accents that you're expecting from the words that are
Hmm.
different than what I'm used to as a American English speaking person. Like this is not like this, yeah. And also like this Lucy Foley book, I'm guessing it's based in the UK, so you'd probably would get a lot of British sounding voices and things like that, and so on and so
Hmm.
forth. So there is these, and I'm a huge I say, audiobooks are huge because I think there are people who will out there who can't sit down and read a novel.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge thing for that. It's the whole, long trips.
Hmm.
I listen to a lot of podcasts too, but like the novels and the trip, and I'm gonna do that. I read physically Adam Caesar's Clown in the Cornfield series, and he's got his third book coming up. And so for that, as I get prepared for that, I will read number one and number two via or listen to them on audiobook
Yeah.
as I get prepared for that because I probably do that at the same time I'm reading something else. And so
Right.
like, that's not the same time people, not me
Right.
reading another novel while I'm listening to it, but I'll get caught up a lot faster listening to an
Yeah.
audiobook than I will reading a physical novel. But yeah, I'm excited. I mean, is there going to be an audiobook for The House That Horror Built?
Yeah, there is. Lisa
Okay.
Flanagan's gonna read it. She actually did the reading for Good Girls Don't Die, and that there's three different narrators in that. They're all female, and she did an amazing job just kind of distinguishing um, the characters and the voices. And so I asked if she could come back for the next one because I just think she's incredible. I love people who are like really perform a novel,
Yes.
I always like it actually when actors read books because they'll perform it. They're not just reading, they're performing the book to you, and I really enjoy that.
And I will say, if anyone reads a biography or a memoir of anything, and the person read it who wrote it, is
Yeah.
also phenomenal. I'll tell you that right now. I read, Anthony Daniels read his own on audiobook.
Hmm.
But like I've read biographies for a number of actors and comedians and things like that. And when they read it themselves, it's just like, it feels like you're in a room having a conversation with this person telling them your life story.
Yeah, I just downloaded Sam Neill's biography
Yeah.
so that I can listen to that. He reads it.
Yeah.
So same thing. Yeah, for something like that, yeah, like a biography, I do like to do that. Listen to like the person who wrote it, read it because they're telling their story the way they want you to hear it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's really good. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent for it. Honestly, nowadays there's so many options for people to read books,
Hmm.
which is amazing, including still people. There's libraries out there. I don't know if you knew that there's still a library. But yeah, there's just so many places that you can get these things, and when you go to promote it, it's like someone can't be like, well, I can't get it. Well, no, you can.
Yeah.
There are places I can't afford it. Again, go to the library, borrow
Yes.
it. Like
Please go to the library. Please don't pirate them.
split the cost of a book with someone else. Let them read
Hmm.
it first and then you read it. Do something to get a
Hmm.
book that you can actually physically read and not steal it because
Hmm.
that's just not fun. And so, yeah, so if audiobooks is your thing, I'm so for it. And I'll do that too now that these books that I've read over the past couple of years that were advanced copies, I'll likely go back and when I revisit them, I go back to them, I'll probably listen to the audiobook because I'm going to take it in a different way. The same thing if you watch a movie that gets or a book that gets adapted to a movie, then
Hmm.
it's always fun to see the version of what you read on page. And a lot of times it's not as good. I'll tell you that much.
Well, I
There
mean,
are a couple. There
I
are a
think they're
couple.
I think they're different.
Yeah.
I say this from a person who's been on the verge of having my work adapted a couple of times, and I have a couple of things potentially in process right now, so please
Yeah.
cross your fingers for me. But I always say like a book and a movie are siblings.
Yes.
They're not twins. So they resemble each other, but they are not the same child. And so because the film is a different medium, there's different demands. For a film audience, for a film audience versus a TV audience versus a book audience, like they're all different. So when you're a writer and you're having your work adapted, you really just have to, again, just like with reviews, you have to let go because
Yeah.
it's a different medium. It needs something different. And the people who do that hopefully know best,
Yes.
what their medium needs.
And I'm like, why would you want to watch a word for word adaptation of your? Like, it just seems weird sometimes to see like I just read recently Hannibal
Hmm.
and Silence of the Lambs, and those movies and books are eerily close. Like the source material and the movies
Silence
are,
of the Lambs is
yes,
very,
it's
very
very very
like
close.
right on top of the book.
And but
Yeah.
which wasn't bad because they're both phenomenal. But
Hmm.
there are other ones where it's like I don't really want to just see what I read. I want to see someone's interpretation, this visualizations. I've seen, and the cool things about reading comics that have been adapted from books as well is the same
Hmm.
thing. You're using visualization to tell some of the story, and so there's new things you're just going to get in the background that they're not physically to say to you or tell you. They're not going to tell you this person looks like this because you can see that person looks like this. And so
Right.
it'd be really weird if you walked in the room and you're like, when you've got glasses on and this person, like we can see that that's on the screen, that you have to write on your pages that this person has glasses and brown hair and da 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 and all that stuff, which is different. But yeah, there's some, and I've actually liked some movies sometimes more. There's been times where I think Jaws, in my opinion, is a better movie than it is a book.
It is.
And yeah,
I
and so
agree.
there's that too. So, but it also it depends on who's adapting it as well. Like who the team, the creative team of adapting your source material is also, it matters there. But well, I mean, I could see this movie, House to Horrible, this book become a movie. I could see that happening. I could,
Yeah, cross your fingers for me.
yes. Well, and the funny thing is like people were like, oh, I can't see anything. In all likelihood, most people out there are trying to sell their stuff outside of the book market as well. So it's
Oh
not like,
gosh, I can't even tell you. Somebody asked me I get this question all the time. People are like, "Would you consider turning your book into a film?" I'm like, "Yes,
yes,
it's not up to me."
if you had all the money in the world in your own studio that you could do it yourself, but other than that, it's not really up to you at
Yeah.
that moment. And so it's a long process to it. It's not one of those things that if you
Oh,
announced today that this was being made into a movie, it might still be 5 years, if not more, before the actual movie comes out. And so people a lot of times see the adaptation news and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited!" Like, just pump the brakes. Sometimes it takes forever to actually
yeah.
have it happen.
I mean, sort of famously, the Meg, right? He had been
Yep.
writing that series for years. It had been like option and then reoption, and the option came back to him, and he tried to get, what did it take? Like 10, 15 years for
Mm-hmm.
him to get that made into a film. John Scalzi talks about this all the time, how Old Man's War has been repeatedly optioned and things don't go through. This happens a lot. I had one of my books was optioned for 2 years. They were going to turn it into a TV series. We had a studio attached. It like there was a producer, like it was ready
Everything.
to
Yeah.
go. And then the studio declined to make the pilot. And that was it,
And I'd like to say it's up until cameras start shooting that
yeah.
it's not real. But nowadays, honestly, it actually doesn't really not real until it actually is on the screen. Because we've
Yeah.
we've learned at different companies who have been like make an entire movie and then say, yeah, we're just not going to release that. So it's
Yeah,
not
my
real until it's on the screen. But yes,
on that subject, my son is still mad that Coyote versus Acme is apparently
you
not going to be
see,
released.
see, we're all like that. I'm a comic book fan, and Batgirl was supposed to come out and things. So
Yeah.
there's these things that it's possible still that no one actually gets to see it, and maybe there's an entire season getting ready to be made. You make the pilot, send it out there, and then that's it. It dies, it goes away because it didn't get watched or whatever. But yeah, it's a fun thing, and it's one of those things though. You got to go back to the material and the thing. This was written as a book.
Hmm.
You wrote this as a novel. It's meant to be ingested as a novel.
Hmm.
And so in the end, if it ends up being just a novel, you won't be, distraught over it. You'll be disappointed that it
Right.
didn't go any further, but like this is what you set out in the first place to make. And to me personally, it's a wonderful novel. I think that people should
Thank
get it
you.
out there and buy it at your local bookstore.
Hmm.
Bookshop.org is a great place for people to buy it if you can't get to your local bookstore because it does support local bookstores. And if audiobook wise, if it ends up on Libro FM, is a good place too because that also supports local bookstores
Hmm.
in a portion. And you own the physical media. It's not it's DRM free, so you actually physically own the audiobook when you buy it, which is really cool. But
And I just want to add really
yeah,
quick. So if people pre-order the book, or
Yes.
even if they buy it the first week it comes out, because I'm not sure when you'll release this. I am doing a free giveaway of signed book plates. If people like to have items, to a signed book plate to go
Yeah.
into your book if you're not in Chicago and cannot come to my launch event on May 14th. Um, you just need to go to my threads, author Christina Henry, or Instagram. You'll see a post about it, which gives you all the info. If you pre-order the book, you can email me and I will send you a free book plate to go in your book.
That's awesome. I love those things. Our buddy Daniel Kraus did that for Whale Fall too, which was really
Hmm.
cool. That if you did that, you get like a bookmark and something else with it as well, which is really awesome. I did it. I even did it, and he came did a signing. So I'm like, I'll do both. I'll pre-order it, get the book plate, and I'll have you sign a different copy. So yeah, it's always fun to do that. And I think that it's one of those things that it means a lot more to me on a book on a shelf that has a book plate or a signed thing in it, because it just, it's one of those ones that I don't think that I'll donate. It's always going to live with me. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, even if it's not personalized to me, I still think it's one of those ones like, that one's signed. I'll
Hmm.
keep that on the shelf. So that's
That's
pretty cool to
cool.
do that. Yeah. And pre-ordering is huge, people. I mean, I don't like, I know it's sometimes budgeting wise and all those things is different for some people, but like, if you know, one of the things is if you are going to buy it on the big Smile store, they
Hmm.
don't charge you until they ship it. So if you are still trying to do it, like, you can still pre-order ahead of time.
Yep.
And other places are similar to that as well. But yeah, buying local is nice. And if you can't, there are options online
Yeah,
to buy it.
bookshop.org is a great option, and you can usually set a store to support.
Yes.
So even if the store isn't right near you, but you're like, oh, I love this indie bookstore that I visited in another city, you can set that store to support, and a portion of the profits will go to that store. So
Yes.
bookshop.org is a great option.
And our website, during our review for House of Horror Built and for this episode, there'll be links to buy it, and it links through to bookshop.org too. So if
Hmm.
you want to make it easy, you can just click the link
Hmm.
and go to that as well. So, which is awesome. But the House that Horror Built hits shelves May 14th. You also have Alice that just hit a new printing. Is it a soft cover? What's the
It's a new cover in a slightly discounted price. That was
okay?
actually an edition that they made especially for Walmart.
Okay.
Although it's gone into some other places, Targets, grocery stores, things like that. It's just sort of it was a way for my publisher to try to reach out to people maybe who wouldn't have seen Alice came out 9 years ago,
Yes.
who maybe wouldn't have seen it or don't have a bookstore near them because a lot of people don't have a bookstore in their town.
Yep.
So, but they might have a Walmart or a Target. So it was a way to kind of reach out and try to reach some people who didn't have an opportunity maybe to see Alice the first time around.
Yes. Yes. And you have Good Girls Don't Die. Came out in 2013.
It came out last year.
Oh, sorry, 23. Sorry, I said
23,
23.
yeah.
Yeah, 2013. It's the 14th. It came out in November. The paperback came
Yes.
out in November. So the paperback's out there on the market too. So grab that. It's also available in audiobook as well. But yeah, I'm in love with it. You know, I hope people learned a little bit about the book, but also about who you are as a writer on here. And I'm thankful that you took some time out of your day to come chat with us. We went a little longer than I had said, but I hope that's okay.
That's okay.
I had a great conversation, so I'm really glad to have met you, and I'm hoping people buy it in droves because I think it's well worth purchasing. I gave it 5 stars out of 5, honestly, on our website.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I'm pretty happy. And yeah, it's also another thing on the review thing. I think it's funny. The reviews are for all you people out there,
Hmm.
not for you as a writer. Like, it's like one of
Yes.
those things. Like, when someone writes a review, it's to get you to potentially buy the book. The writer is they made the book. You
Yeah.
have copies of it. You don't need to know how good it is. But yeah, so check that out. We have a review online too. So, but yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christina, for coming on.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Thank you.